Call the meeting to order. The record show that the board members present are Mr. Bruce, Mrs. Faisal, Mr. Gannon, Dr. Garcia, Mr. Ureste, Mr. Stahanowicz, and Dr. Barksdale. We do have a quorum. Jimmy, is there anyone signed up to address us by a public comment?
No, sir. We do not have anybody signed up.
All right, we'll give, unless, in case you have not had a chance to review the minutes, from last meeting, we'll give everybody a couple minutes to look at those and move on. So we have a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion, second from Dr. Garcia, second from Mr. Sahanowitz. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item D is investment policy. Ms. Priscilla.
The board of directors, we bring this to you every year. It's our investment policy. The current investment policy was approved in 2024. No changes at this time. Annual approval is required in accordance with Texas Government Code Chapter 2256.005. And I've included it in your file, but we need to get the board's approval annually.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion from Mr. Sahanowitz. Second from Dr. Garcia.
I was gonna ask a question.
I was going to say, do we have any questions? Go ahead.
So I guess could you, since I'm new, can you just kind of go over how this particular vendor was selected?
It's not a vendor, it's just our investment policy,
Oh,
our
okay.
procedures and what we go by the district. Currently, the last change in 2017 was to include a sweep account, which is what we currently as our source of income from using the investment.
And what is a sweep account?
It has, we have money in our savings and it gets swept out and it gains interest. It
Oh,
comes
okay.
back in our check.
Okay, and that's located on which page in here?
And here I can.
If you look at page 7, it shows what the authorized investments are,
Oh, okay, okay,
which are obligations of the United States, certificates of deposit, money market mutual funds, and local government investment pools. Are
okay.
the allowed investments.
And 8 has the diversity.
And 8 has the diversification.
So it's mostly in treasuries, CDs, and a money market.
That is what we're
Okay,
about.
okay.
Yes.
And what are the authorized pools? Is that,
We don't use any of those.
okay,
The only one we're utilizing was the sweep account through the money market.
oh, okay.
This is the same as the interim report you did a little while ago, right?
Yes.
Your meeting?
On the financials, I'll always state how much we earned. And last year we earned $288,302.
So the policy is basically designed to make sure we don't have ongoing tax.
Oh, right.
So last year was 288?
Yes.
Okay,
And actually what we're doing here is we're making no changes to the policy. We just create a program for them for the next year.
these are just maybe questions.
Okay.
Rookie question.
Any other comment questions? We have a motion and a second. Do we have, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Item E is the insurance consultant. I believe this is for the health insurance.
Yes, sir. This year, we're asking for the board's permission to go into a contract this year with Bill Lusterberg. He has been our insurance consultant for the last several years. We have had a very good working relationship with them, working out our rates. This year, they'll be going out for medical, vision, life, accidental death and dismemberment, along with group term life. This contract is for 1 year and it is in the amount of $13,000. And again, sir, we're asking for the board approval.
Just had a question. sorry.
Sure.
Make sure I understand. So this person's basically acting as our broker, shopping the policy.
Yes, sir.
And then coming to us and saying, here's.
That's correct.
Um. Is there a need to go out to review rates or not?
We've actually been using him and his wife, Bill and Martha Rusterberg, for several years now. And it always seemed that they get us a lot better rates for our staff. We have gone out a couple of years ago and looked at the possibility of going out with a broker. I forget the name,
He's
but
not a broker, he's a consultant.
no, the company that we had gone out to. And the savings that they were gonna give us were gonna be passed along on the premiums to staff. So we felt that it was still in the best interest to consider the Rusterbergs, and that's why we're going to the board again.
Right, I just curious in terms of when was the last time we did this with going out for pricing on these policies?
For the consultant or for the insurance?
For the consultant and the insurance,
For the insurance, we go every year, but for the consultant, the same thing, sir, it's annual.
is annually?
Yes, sir.
So for example, we got several bids last time. One was by a fairly new company
Right,
that didn't have a very long track record, was
Yeah.
providing exceptional rates. We had some concerns whether there was private equity involved, because that can always change the dynamics of how insurance works. But it gives us the full overview of each of the opportunities that are out there, the pluses and minuses, and what their actual bids are.
and I just curious, was this, I guess this is somewhere this is a professional services contract?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's different, okay,
Yes, sir. And again, it's just for 1 year for this year to negotiate our 2026 rates.
okay, make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a
Second motion.
second from Dr. Barksdale. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. All right, bids and proposals for,
You have the audit report.
Should Mr. Gannon, it's tab F.
okay, audit report, thank you.
Yes, I want to introduce APIP. There were our auditors this year for 2024. Janet Pittman's here and Nicholas Gutierrez will be giving the presentation. Yes, let me grab it quick.
Good evening. Just wanted to let you know that we're gonna present, what's in your financials. I have a brief presentation, to a high level, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about the financials. Just gonna want to give you a brief kind of overview of what's in your annual comprehensive financial report. You have your introduction, your transmittal letter. This is where the chief appraiser and the finance director, they let the board and the citizens of their county, they give them a overview of the audit, overview of how the district did during the year. This comes completely from them. Secondly, in the report, you have the independent auditor's report. This is the only thing in the report that actually belongs to us. Like I said, the rest of it belongs to management and to you, the district. You have your management discussion and analysis. This is where, you can get the real high level cliff notes, where most of the readers can get a lot of the information that they should need to understand what's in these financial statements. You have the actual government-wide and fund financial statements. These are the actual numbers of the appraisal districts. The notes for the financial statements, these will give you a little bit more of a breakdown of what makes up some of those financial statements. You have some of your required supplementary information, such as your budgetary comparison, your TCDRS required schedules. We have some other supplementary information where we show the actual amount refunded to the taxing units. And then you also have the statistical tables. It lets you know, it looks at it at a 10-year look back of how the district has done, how the district's grown, how the district's doing currently. This is a requirement with GFOA, which the district did get their 2023 Certificate of Excellence from the Government Financial Officer Association. I do not know how many years the district has had,
20 years.
20 years. That's something to be very, very proud of. We're also going out for GFOA this year. We have made sure that the report is in compliance with GFOA. Again, to our. Oh, this is.
GFOA is
Government Finance Office of Accountability,
Officers Association.
Officers Association. Which way?
Arrow.
Okay.
Towards him.
There
Yeah,
we
there you go.
So like I said, the independent auditor's report is the only thing in this report that belongs to us. This is where we let you know the standards that we're required to follow, the generally accepted auditing standards. We'll let you know what the purpose of the audit opinion is. Make sure that the financial statements are in compliance and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And we're happy to report that our opinion for the year is unmodified. Doesn't sound like a great opinion, but it just means we didn't modify anything in the financial statements. Crystal and her team did a great job with these financial statements. We just came in and give our opinion that it is in good shape. Like I said, I won't go too much into the management discussion analysis, but this is where we can get a lot of the information, your financial highlights, any kind of overview of those financials, your budgetary highlights, your capital assets. If you had any debt, which I do not believe you do, this is where it would all be. And if any of the readers of the financial statements wanted to know where to contact management or yourself, this is where this information would be. So getting into some of those financial highlights. On the government-wide side, this is where you're going to have your long-term assets and your long-term liabilities. Your assets of the district did exceed the liabilities, which is what's considered net position, by about 10.5 million at year end. Of that 10.5 million, about 7 million of that is unrestricted. The rest of it is kind of tied up in some of your assets. It's unrestricted. It does include some of your committed funds, which I'll get into here in a little bit. Your net position did increase by about 2.1 million from 2023, primarily due to increasing some of the rates from the taxing units. On the general fund side, this is the side that management manages and does the budgetary comparisons that you guys are getting monthly and quarterly. Your fund balance for the year was 8.8 million. This was an increase of about 1.2 million from 2023. Of this 8.8 million, about 4 million that is what's considered unassigned. This is for any kind of operations throughout the year. There is 4.8 million in committed funds. Of this committed funds, there is a surplus embedded in these committed funds of 823,483. That is a very, very healthy surplus amount. Again, a testament to management, how well they've handled the budget. And some of these committed funds were kept because some of those were spent throughout the year. Some of those committed funds get to be kind of built back up. One of the major ones, which I'll get to here in a little bit, is the election expense. As we know, that was a big expense this year. Some of that was paid out of committed funds. So making sure that some of those committed funds do get the necessary replenish that they need.
So dumb question, committed versus restricted.
So the committed funds is what you, the board, have set aside
In
and
a line item.
in a lineup, right? Whether it's be for election, any kind of building maintenance, any kind of legal defense. They're not considered restricted funds under the full accrual basis. They are still considered unrestricted, but they are committed at the fund level basis.
Okay, so the election was paid for by unassigned, unrestricted.
It was paid for out of committed funds, about half of it paid for it out of committed funds.
We had established a line item for it.
Right.
Getting it set was something of an adventure because every estimate we got was significantly different from the previous one.
So if we wanted to create a value of committed and uncommitted and surplus per taxpayer account, we just do simple math. That got total divided by the total number of accounts. In other words, each taxpayer, these are funds from taxes collected, right?
They're funds from the taxing units, right? Or what they're paying.
That's what they pay us to
Right.
exist, right? So we could know them per taxing,
Yes,
per account,
right.
50 cents, $1.50, whatever. How many accounts are there?
Well, 780 in round figures, or
Okay.
780,000.
Right, so some of it is considered unassigned, can be paid for all your.
You can divide the 700 into like 8 million and there you go, right?
Right.
One way to look at it, yes.
Yes, sir. So like I said, your revenues for the year, 25.5 million, is a $2 million increase. Most of this came from the taxing units increase, of about 1.9 million. Your expenditures were 24.3 million. It did increase as revenues go up. Most of the time, so do expenditures. About 1.7 million over 2020 from 2023. The bulk of this increase was that election expense, about 837,000. Like I said, some portion of it paid out of committed funds. The other portion of it paid out of your unassigned fund balance. But some of those committed, all of those committed funds have been replenished with your
Expensive
surplus.
dowry. Expensive dowry.
So you also have a letter with you. This is our letter of conduct of audit. This is where we will let you know if there's any accounting policy changes during the year. There was one, GASB, they're always keeping us on our toes. We had GASB 101 this year, required us to change the way we were recording our compensated absences. This is one of the few districts that there wasn't that big of a change as far as the change, as far as being in alignment with GASB. The staff had already pretty much been in alignment with GASB 101. There was a slight change, but not much. It's where we let you know about your accounting estimates and your disclosures. The majority of your accounting estimates come from TCDRS, the valuations that get done in order to determine what your net pension liability is. That's where the bulk of your estimates are. There's some smaller ones in your capital asset lives. If there was any difficulties in performing the audit, any misstatements or disagreements with management, we'd be required to tell you that. Happy to report that there was not. Crystal and her staff, they were amazing, great to work with. We did get all of our representations that were required from management before releasing this audit. If there was any consultations with any other independent accountants, if you went out, shopped a third-party opinion, we would be required to tell you that. Happy to report, there was none. And you were in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. Yes, sir.
Nicholas, can you expound on the RSI? No matter.
Yes, that is going to be your TCDRS schedules. So we're required to, because it is a government audit,
Right.
to show at least 10 years back of your net pension liability, of all your the service costs within there. Some of our districts don't have 10 years, but it looks like you guys do it, so that we're required to include this in the back of the audit.
Good, thank you.
Sure. Like I said, you're in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. One of the things that makes you in compliance is those investment policies, making sure you have those quarterly reports. So there's my test right there. I saw it. And here is our contact information. Like I said, I'm happy to take any questions you guys may have, but if any come up, that is the contact information for myself and Janet.
What is GASB?
Government Accounting Standards Board. That is the requirement for all governments to follow.
GASB. What is GASB?
Mr. President, I have a question.
Certainly.
What was your name, sir?
Nick Gutierrez. Nicholas.
Gutierrez. Okay,
Yes, sir.
and the lady that was with you, what is her name?
Janet Pittman. She's our engagement partner.
Janet Whitman. And I don't know if it's in here somewhere, but I know it's not on the letter. If it's not in here anywhere, is there any way that you can send an email to Chief Appraiser so that we can have a name, because the letter's not signed by anybody and I don't see names here anywhere. Maybe can you send an email to him so that we can have our records as to who did the audit, who were the persons that did it?
Yes, sir.
Because there's nothing in there that says in, just for the record.
Yes.
Do we have any other questions?
Well, that would be Nicholas and Janet, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any more? Or
We did have some
More
staff
staff,
come with us, but yeah, for the most part, it was like.
Yeah, we don't need everybody's names. I just need to know, I just want to know who the main persons were.
just so I'll understand when I go home and get ready to absorb all of this. The cash flow stream starts with the assessor collective. And he's got his data gathered. And it goes to you. Next, for preparation of this report, at what point is the money put in the right column for all the different units? Where, I'm just curious, where does that happen? Does that happen here, or does that happen
Here.
in your office or his office?
In his office.
Is that right?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. your
Yeah.
question.
The receipts that go to each of the taxing units. At what point is that split up and the check mailed?
So they are billing, they have a cost per account that they deal with it, with all the taxing entities that they do appraisals for. Our contract is different. We do a cost per account on what it costs us to collect the property taxes. So theirs is completely different from ours.
But you're the collecting agent
Yes,
and then therefore the dispersing agent too.
we don't collect for them.
No, sir. Are you
We
asking
bill
about,
the taxi.
Yeah.
The tax entity.
they pay us directly and then the refunds, Crystal sends them back to the.
We're essentially a business expense for the taxing entity.
No, I was referring to the revenues from the school districts,
So they
the
pay,
the college district, the fire, the EMS, et cetera, et cetera. Does that get divided up at your office?
so the property taxes are collected by us. And so what we do is we get it, and I think it's the next day or two, right, Carlos? We disperse. So the next day or two, we disperse to all the different taxes and the school district, city, what have you. And then they in turn fund the fire, police, what, and all these. What they do is they are also in the contract with the different taxing entities. And they charge them for doing the appraisals of all the different entities, and they collecting them directly. We don't have anything to it.
No, I understand. It's a pile of work. It's an impressive report.
Oh, yeah, there's impressive work.
And
But
it's
just
all
for the
online.
record, for the record, we do a lot more work. And charging on that.
I'm just kind of
So,
trying to
could we
understand.
get that draft in here?
Mhm.
Okay, do we have any other questions? All right. Do we need to have a formal motion to approve the report?
I don't believe so, sir, but if I may, I'd like to give Crystal some kudos because whenever we do these audits, the first thing she does is meet with the auditors and set them up with our conference room. And then just says, whatever y'all need, let us know, and we make everything available to them. And this is the second, correct me if I'm wrong, or third audit that has come back unmodified. And it sounds very, trivial, but it's a big thing because there was nothing to be made. So I'd just like to give her credit for, making sure that she keeps us in line. And also on the same token, to give the board thanks because while we did encumber some funds, you guys give us the support that we need to be able to get those last minute expenses at the end of the year. But as you can see, we're very, very cognizant of the fact that these are taxpayer money. These are money that needs to be given back, and we are very aware of that. So I just want to say thank you, but also thank you to Chris.
Makes it look easy. Make it look easy.
So is it fair to say that this is where the action is on all the money that everyone cares about? Okay.
Yeah,
You're looking at it,
yes, sir.
you're balancing what he's got with what a rule somewhere says that they're supposed to receive
Right.
based on the tax rates and so forth and so on. So this is the crux.
They're checking our officer, yeah, Mr.
They're not checking, they're not
Mr.
checking. They have their own office.
But I mean, but to check your office, they've got to know what those numbers are because it's a percentage of those numbers, right?
The percentage of the appraisal service.
What comes
Yes.
here?
Yeah.
All right, well, it's working on the big picture.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
I think we can all agree that the term unmodified does not carry the cachet.
Right. Legislation out to try to fix it, but that's how they do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, man.
Make a T-shirt.
2.0.
Not so sure about that. Okay. Okay, so the group medical insurance, vision, life, AD&D, GTL, janitorial, let's.
Yes, this is just information, so you're aware that these items are going out for bid. For request for proposal for the group medical insurance, vision, life, AD&D and GTL, group term life and accidental death and dismemberment. We go out to bid every year annually. It's about $2,008,000 that we'll go out to bid for, and we'll have it running in the Express News and in public purchase.
And so the contract we just approved for the consultant will be the one who analyzes these bids and makes a recommendation.
Yes, sir.
Makes the negotiations with them. So that's just for information that we're going out to bid for that. Also, we will be also going out to bid for janitorial services. This is a contract awarded annually to perform janitorial services within this building. The contract will be covered from January 1st, 2026 to December 31st, 2026. The budgeted amount is $65,000. Again, this is an invitation for bid, so you will see it in the Express News, and we'll be advertising for this, for those services.
When do you expect it to be in the Express News?
It should be on this Sunday and the next Sunday.
And who, is there a person who's charged with the responsibility of, or the labor of interviewing the folks and analyzing
Yes, that is.
their resumes? That's what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Thank you. So we'll do a walk through the building, and we get a pretty good response
Yeah.
with it.
Okay, good. No, it's a good piece of business.
Mhm.
Mom and pop firm, yep.
Yeah.
All right, now for that moment we've all been waiting for, the legislative update.
Yes, sir. I wanted to break down the recap between property tax relief bills and then the bills that, had a major focus on the appraisal district board of directors and also the ARB. So first and foremost, we keep current property tax relief. The legislature made a big effort to push property tax relief. House Bill 9, which was passed and was sent to the governor's office, which takes effect January the 1st, 2026, will create $125,000 exemption for business personal property accounts. Then you have Senate Bill 4, that is going to be a bill that increases the mandatory school district homestead exemption amount from right now, this $100,000 to $140,000. That was also sent to the governor's office. And then finally, you have Senate Bill 23, which will increase the disability and over 65 exemption for a school district from 10,000 to 60,000. Now, the thing with these are, as Mr. Rusty knows, these will require, if they're constitutional amendments, and they'll go to the voters, but it's very seldom that the voters will not pass, property tax relief. So these are the three bills that will directly impact homeowners as far as seeing tax relief. Moving on to the bills for the appraisal district board of directors and ARB. The first one that passed was House Bill 148, which was a bill that creates a training program for board of director members for a CAD in a populous county of 75,000 or more. And that was sent to the governor's office on the 26th of May. That takes effect September the 1st. We had heard a lot of talk about House Bill 2786, which was calling for the change from the tax code from periodic reappraisal to annual reappraisal. This was the one that was filed by Representative Turner out of Tarrant. And this was also the one that had an amendment filed by Representative DeRazio from San Antonio. That one did not pass the Senate. We have House Bill 3575, which is a bill that seeks any candidate that's running for election for the board of directors of a county appraisal district must file the candidacy with the county clerk, or for counties that have the position, the county elections administrator. As our elected board members know, y'all filed it with the county judge at the time, so they wanted to change that. This would take effect September the 1st. Moving along, Senate Bill 973. This one, it was completely germane to what happened at the end. This bill was allowing appraisal districts to be able to post on their websites overhead sketches of properties. We wouldn't be able to do that for confidentiality purposes. Now this law changes it, but there was amendment that was filed at the last minute before the third reading which added the language from Betancourt's, Senator Betancourt's language in Senate Bill 2538. Which the language states that, there cannot be a reappraisal plan that is approved by the board of directors that includes a standard or timeline that is contrary to the requirements of section 2301A, which again it calls for the appraisal of property at 100% of market value January the 1st. That bill did pass and it will become law with the governor's signature. We have Senate Bill 974, which
Excuse me, Mr. President. I have a question. Can you
Yes, sir.
expand more on what's on that bill?
on that bill, like, again, there was two bills going on in the House and the Senate, and they were both trying to change the reappraisal plan. And this is me personally speaking, I think this was a direct result of what happened in Tarrant County, because they were wanting to nullify reappraisals for consecutive years. So House Bill 2786 called for the changing of the code from periodic to annual. And then Senator Betancourt's bill, Bill 2538, had just a change to that section of the code for the reappraisal plan that said any reappraisal plan approved by a board of directors may not include a standard or timeline that is contrary to the requirements of 2301A, which again recalls for the appraisal of property January the 1st at 100% of market value.
But it didn't change chapter 25, or is it chapter 18, where it allows one to appraisal between 1 and 3 years.
It did not change that
2301E.
language, correct? To my knowledge, it did not.
Okay, so 2301E is just, you've got to do it on January 1st.
2301A. 2301E is what we've talked to the board about, where without clear and convincing evidence, we cannot increase the value from the prior year, which again, we've showed the board that we did not send out as many notices that we did the prior year because for that same matter. So 2301E is the one where it says without clear and convincing data, you cannot change the value of a protested account.
But 973 is not going to change our reappraisal plan.
I'm not a lawyer, ma'am, and so here's where, the more and more I think about it, this is why we would need a legal opinion. Because the word standard is where I could see a potential problem. Because the timeline, what this board here asked for or change in the reappraisal plan did not change the timeline for us to reappraise annually. And I thank y'all for that, because again, we want to look at current data. What y'all allowed us to do was look at current data, and then but what the language that Senator Betancourt included, it may not include a standard. The standard is that term right there is where I could see, or there could be some questions as to the fact that, so in 2026, because this law takes effect in January the 1st, September the 1st of 2025. Hypothetically, in a property that was protested this year and it rolls over to 2026, in 2026, if we have clear and convincing data that that neighborhood has gone up in value based on sales, would that standard be contrary to what is the language of the law now? Like I said, I'm not an attorney, but that's where I would definitely want to get some clerical
So
clarification.
that doesn't change that chapter 25 though.
It does not, no.
So you've got two, 2301A is January 1st
Mhm.
and E is convincing evidence. But
Correct.
it doesn't adjust the main periodic opportunity in chapter 25.
And these are the same, questions that I have too,
Well,
because
I've had people look into it and they've even talked to the guy that writes the bills and he said it doesn't change the opportunity to do a periodic appraisal.
2786. The failure of 2786 prevented any changes to what we're doing, so. I mean, it's everything, everything stays the
Status
same.
quo.
Nothing-
Except I'm hearing from Roy that it may not change, it may change status.
Well,
I'm saying that it'd be well worth us to look into it, because I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm going against the law, because again, 2301A, let's just focus on that, states that all property will be appraised at market value January the 1st. So when you're looking at this language here, that on the bill that was passed on the amendment, any reappraisal plan approved by the board may not include a standard that is contrary to that requirement. That's where I would say, let's ask an attorney, an ad valorem attorney, how they would interpret that letter, that word standard. Because like I said, I'm not an attorney and I don't want to pretend that I am.
and my thoughts would be that unless we have a challenge, there's really no reason to do that, because we killed 2786 to maintain the status quo, and unless there's a pressing reason, board has laid out the plan, and so I don't think we should go fishing to undermine what we passed. I mean, unless there's something that just jumps out, I think we're fine the way we are.
I think so too, but if someone challenges it.
Yeah,
it'd be up to the
challenges,
Attorney
yeah.
General to render an opinion of what.
But for us just to go stir it up, I don't think we should do that. I think if we're challenged and there's a legal question, then that's fine. We'll do it. Okay?
Need to be addressed at that time.
Yeah.
Your
Understood.
recommendation.
Getting back to Senate Bill 974 now, for whatever reason, prior to this bill passing, teachers were not allowed to serve on the appraisal review board. Didn't make any sense. Now, this law will take effect September the 1st of 2025. So now teachers will be able to serve on the appraisal review board. We also have Senate Bill 2073, which to our new building committee, this bill will allow the BOD of a CAD to finance the purchase of real property and may finance the construction of improvements for an appraisal office. Taxing units will not be required to approve the financing. And again, if the board of directors submits a property transaction to the taxing unit for approval, if they fail to act timely for the proposal, it is treated now as approved, because right now if we don't hear back from the taxing units, it's treated as a negative and we have to have a 2/3 majority. So this law would help ease that situation for us moving forward. And then, let's see here. I apologize, I did include Senate Bill 1173 at the last minute, which increases the threshold required for competitive bids up from 50,000 to 100,000.
This is only for districts, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And right now, our board has decided that it's 50,000. So if the board wants to leave it at that, I'm fine with that. But again, that was a law that changed that could potentially, warrant some looking into by the board.
I would make a recommendation, we consider that. I mean, these guys are getting paid all the big bucks to protect us. There's no reason for them to come and ask us every single time, we may act or something, but.
We just had a $65,000 one.
Yeah,
So.
I think it would make sense. Why don't you look at our contracts and determine how many of them and which ones would pierce that threshold?
Sounds good.
And then we can make some
Thank you.
informed decisions as to whether we wanna, because we could go to a different route. We could go to 75,000 or
Right,
whatever.
exactly.
So if there's some high dollar ones that we really wanna, every time the board assess and make a judgment on, we wanna have that ability. But if it's fairly routine stuff that we're confident that you all can handle, I don't see any.
We'll look into it. We'll bring it back to the board the
I
next
think that
meeting.
makes sense.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I
Are
appreciate
you
that.
okay with that, Mr. Ursi?
I mean, I have to see, I haven't even looked at the law, so I have no problem exploring it.
Okay,
I don't want to commit, so without.
We can explore it and decide later.
Yeah.
so
Perfect.
maybe if not the next board meeting, at least before September
Absolutely.
1st, give us an update on that so we can make some judgments.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir. And then the last one, again, this was Senator Bettencourt's original bill, Senate Bill 2538, which ultimately was passed when they included the amendment in a completely different bill. And that it would require reappraisal, to not have a standard or timeline contrary to 2301A. So, moving forward, well, I mean, the legislative session is now over. But is this okay for my board as far as an update legislatively? I mean, just ones that affect your constituents and then others that affect this board and our district operations.
I think, at the next meeting, there's a finite time that the governor has to sign this thing.
Correct.
So at the next meeting, why don't you just update on, in case there's anything the governor hasn't signed, which he has wants to do.
Okay. I think some of these, they'll come along even without a signature. It's if he vetoes them, then that's when we have.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but definitely let you have them.
Exercise his veto, power.
Yes, sir.
What did they change? It was 250 all the way up to the end. Again, when did they change it to 125 on that BPP?
On the BPP, that was the original, I think it was Representative Myers that started with the 250,000.
Right.
And then they were going, I think that was ultimately the compromise between the House and the Senate was the 125. That's what actually got it pushed through. But you're right, it did start at 250.
Yeah, we followed it all the way, Carlos and Stephanie and all us, so it must have happened at the last minute.
Mhm.
I didn't remember changing.
So I know it's here, but how many accounts would be affected by House Bill 9?
I don't have that information, man. I can send it to the board. You wanna know how many would be completely exempt from that? Okay, I will email the board.
What was the threshold before this one? Stuff question.
25,000. 2,500.
No, it's 5,000. On the BPP?
For BPP,
Yeah, it was 5,000. They didn't have to, well, at least to report, they didn't have to report this was more than 5,000.
right,
Isn't that right, Carlos?
Yeah, 5,000.
okay. Is that correct?
Does the over 65 apply to primary and secondary residential, or just one residential?
Primary.
Just primary.
Yes, sir.
So SB 23 is confusing for me because I thought we had a frozen, I thought over 65 was already frozen.
That is for, this is for the, if I'm mistaken, with the local.
No, this does change the exemption amount, and it also will provide for some modifications with the freezes from previous year legislation, but it does affect those that are over 65. They'll get an increase in their homestead exemption as well as they're over 65. Now, the way that it goes with the way that it over 65 works, the freeze, if you will, is actually a ceiling. It's a point at which they won't pay more under most circumstances. There are some narrow exceptions to this, but they won't pay more than whatever they paid to the school district the year, or whichever entities froze, because the county and city of San Antonio freeze here too. And the ACCD does also. Anyway, it sets the ceiling. Taxes can calculate less than that. They'll pay the lesser of the two. Okay, but there were some changes made in the last legislative session to make some modifications to the freeze and allow for a refreeze at a lower amount if there's certain certain tax relief that comes along, an increase in the exemption, for instance. That happened twice. We've had to refreeze over 65s twice, and then we will do so likely again.
So this is gonna require us to go back like we did.
The prior year from 60 to 100.
Now, this is one of the things that I'm sure that TEA is gonna require information of what it was before and what it was after. So it is gonna probably affect our certification like it did two years ago, to where we will certify at the current exemption amounts and then immediately process a supplement right behind it with the new amounts to show the difference, because the entities are gonna have to report that information to TEA. And this is all because all of this is being done before the election of the constitutional amendment. And so they're gonna have to have the information one way or the other, because if it doesn't pass, which I do not believe
I bet
will
you
be
done
the
should
case.
pass it.
I'd buy your lunch anyway, because I'm with you. It's gonna pass, and it's gonna pass overwhelmingly, but we'd have to be able to roll it back. And that's just not gonna happen. There has not been an election, a constitutional amendment election that increases exemptions that has failed.
And you know, Mr. Director, we're gonna do our best like we did 2 years ago to get you the information as soon as we can, because I know how it puts your office in a bind too. So the sooner we can get our stuff to you, the sooner you can get that out there. So we'll do our best like we did last time.
And just for the board's information, it was a lot of work for them and a lot of work for us. I say them, but for the appraisal district and for the tax office, there was a lot of work to do, all that.
So, you kind of confused me there a little bit, Scott. So it's not retroactive. You're not doing those calculations to do the retroactive exemption. You're doing it for.
It's for 2025, and we have already started that process.
Okay.
So in that sense, it's retroactive only for 2025.
Okay,
Not previous years.
gotcha.
And these exemption amounts don't affect ACCD. This is only for the school district.
Okay. Okay.
Now, the business personal property exemption will affect all entities, but that starts in 2026.
Right.
Yes, we're so glad that that's happening in 2026 because that would have been a monumental undertaking to take care of all three of these at one time.
Gotcha.
So if you've got a mom and pop business and their business assets are $40,000, they just got exempted.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
Starting in 2026.
So SB 23 affects 2025, SB 4 affects 2025,
Yes,
and then only HB 9 starts next year.
Correct. And Ms. Hazel, I do remember, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. Originally, like Mr. Ressi said, this exemption did start at 250,000. And the state had sent an email out to all the all the appraisal districts asking for, like, they wanted to put together a fiscal note saying, if this passes, what's going to be the impact? At that time, and I'll get you the exact figures with the 125, but Scott had run preliminary numbers. Had it been $250,000, we would have in essence lost about 2/3 of our business personal property accounts. However, we would only have lost less than $2 billion in value out of approximate 15 billion. So even exempting all of those at 250 or less, we would have still had significant value because again, the majority of the building personal property are significant in value. But to your point, Mr. Bruce, the property owners, the mom and pops that would need this type of relief, this bill, even at the 125, still gonna, help a lot of property owners out.
Oh, yeah.
That's gonna be really good.
Yeah.
But we'll get you the data.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking about my old neighborhood and West Avenue and Fulton and all those little shops there, and they own their property, they own their land. And, the property tax is a big hit for them.
I gotta give my business person.
So any little bit
Right here, Mr. Rodriguez, he puts together some virtual workshops
Yeah.
where him and his staff, they will reach out in English and Spanish to business owners as far as helping them fill out the renditions. And we've gotten such a good feedback from them because again, a lot of it is just the unknown. How do I do this? It seems like a very daunting process, and they have helped with the property owners as far as explaining the process and helping them. And we've gotten such good feedback. So again, something like this is going to really, really help them out too.
Yeah, okay. They're the ones that need it most.
Yep.
But my opinion.
So you'll give us an update?
I'll send it, yes.
based on-
Would you like an email or do you want it at the next meeting?
You can do both.
Okay.
Send the email, but that may create questions that we have for the next meeting, so. All right, we are on to circuit breaker limitations.
Miss, this is the one that you had asked to be included on here?
Yeah, I think Bruce had a question about it. Your comment about the circuit breaker map.
Is this available to us in interactive live online? bcad.org/something.
not at this point,
But
but
you had to do something like that to create this, right?
that our GIS group has that information that we can display on our maps internally. Our maps online don't have quite the same capability, but we might be able to put out a static copy of it. An interactive copy, probably not.
Okay, it's hard to read.
Is it the color,
Even
sir?
on my computer, when I zoom in and blow it up. I was just trying to pick a couple of random accounts just to see what was going on in the neighborhood, and 20%'s pretty good hit.
I guess part of what just, you had mentioned this at one of the previous meetings in that third party analysis of
Yeah,
equity.
Mhm.
This kind of shows, if I see blue, that's where the circuit breaker.
we have a lot of
Kinda
circuit
stop.
breakers in the
Right,
area
that's where they had the
that
20%
that
threshold.
report said is classically overvalued. The lower quintile property values were consistently overvalued, not just here, but in every major city of Texas. And you sort of see that reflected here in the ones that did the circuit breaker, the non-residential homesteads, for example. Just so is there something systemic going on there?
As far as systemics, it's just the data that we're looking at, we don't purposely look at anything other than the data. And of course, in residential areas, we have them delineated by neighborhoods. So whatever the data shows in that neighborhood is going to dictate whether it does exceed that threshold or hit the 20%. Ironically enough,
These are primarily going to be rental properties and apartments, right?
They're all types of properties. They're
But
all
it's
types of
non-residential,
non-homestead residential, correct. That includes development dirt. That includes things that are being turned into subdivisions. There are a lot of other things that go into this. This isn't just homes. This is a lot more than that. As a matter of fact, the homesteads, or I mean, it trips me up too. The category A, single family residential properties are a small piece of this.
Okay, so residential, this includes like undeveloped land,
Yes,
zone.
yes.
Okay, so I guess I thought I saw another map where it just segmented out the single family homes.
I don't know
I
about
don't
that.
believe this is the same map now.
Okay,
And
Okay.
getting back to the legislative update, the circuit breaker was a pilot program that was implemented in the 2023 legislative session. And it was for 24, 25, and 26. And there was no bills to extend that circuit breaker past 2026. So unless they do something in 2027, the circuit breaker limitation for 20% will expire at the end of 26.
Can I ask a question? I'm new, so it's
Sure.
I'm just trying to understand. So what's the significance of the circuit breaker accounts in terms of accounts? I mean, people, the circuit breakers for, I guess, building or whether it's commercial or residential, I mean.
The circuit breaker, sir, was designed by the legislature they heard a lot of talk about there is no protection, if you will, for rental properties, for renters.
Okay.
So the circuit breaker, in essence, was to give some type of relief for properties that did not have that 10% homestead cap. So the legislature had gone back and forth as to what they would do, and they decided to do 20% of non-homesteaded properties. That includes commercial, business, personal property,
Just real property.
just real property, but they did include commercial.
Yes.
$5 million or less.
Okay.
So if it went up, exceeded 20%, it was automatically capped at that 20%. So again, this was just a pilot program for 24, 25, and 26. And this will be, or 2026 will be the last year that it goes into
Okay.
effect. But it was to help offset some of those increases.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Any other questions? All right, we're going to talk clarification on valuation process.
so again, this just kind of stemmed off some emails I think that Rogelio and I had together. So I just wanted to bring it out in the open, so it wasn't just like an email. So I'm still, because and part of it is I'm trying to answer questions that get to me from
Absolutely.
the public. So I'm still really confused about the algorithm that's used in the valuation process. Because when I personally do it, I see that it's a 12-month period of sales. And then it's mostly kind of trying to figure out a word to say. It ends up being the highest of that 12 months of sales, even when it's not necessarily close to January 1st.
I don't know how you're doing your analysis, Ben, but if I'm correct, excuse me, if I remember correctly, I think one of your first concerns was that we don't account for depreciation in properties that have not sold. Was that?
That's also part of it. So I'm just kind of starting with the first,
Okay.
but it's kind of like in the circuit breaker map, all of these more legacy, more low income areas that have like been divested in. Can't really sell it at retail, right? Because they're dealing with older housing stock.
But again,
And I'm not
they're
saying
not
that-
just housing, though. Remember, we're.
So I'm guessing maybe I could get a new map where it's just residential of the circuit breaker. And so when you're talking about a low income divested area, right? And this urban 3 report, which brought it up.
Mhm.
And you're valuing it and taking into consideration if you're building up the housing stock.
When I
Is
think-
that,
did you say what you
is
would
that, you're not taking into, it is the housing stock being taken into as a consideration for a value.
Absolutely. I do want to elaborate on that. I just want to make sure that I don't give wrong information, because again, talking about the depreciation, we do make sure that we look at properties and their current conditions. We don't assume that because your property sold that they're going to all sell at the same rate, because again, yours could have had some major upgrades that the other properties don't. So part of our field inspection process is to identify the depreciation, and that is calculated into our algorithm when we're looking at neighborhood models.
Okay, so when I get my evidence packet, this is just me personally,
Yes.
I see a higher end value for properties that are all built under 1979, which is when the first major building code changed, right? Lead-based paint, electric, hailstorm roofs. And I'm seeing in my evidence packet, sales of houses that have been significantly more renovated. So this is a discussion, like, how then, maybe Tom knows what I'm talking about. So then how then is a house that I have that's less than under 1979 getting a value in the range of houses that have been significantly improved?
Every residential property value starts off with a cost basis. So it's taking into account the age of the home, the condition of the home, and all the individual characteristics. So depreciation and age is calculated into that. Then it's grouped into its market segment, which would be a neighborhood. So it's in theory, a neighborhood is going to be of like properties. So if it's 1970s, 1980s built houses, they're all going to be grouped together in a neighborhood. So we're looking at all 1970s versus 80s houses together. Now, when we get into comparables, now we're looking for a sample, because not every property sells every year. The sample changes from year to year based on the sales. Some neighborhoods have a better sample of sales than other neighborhoods. So then when you get into the algorithm, we have a primary search and a secondary search. The primary search looks for comparables within the neighborhood based on, and it scores them based on various different aspects: age, size, location.
You have a grid of criteria.
Yes. Now, when when the sample is not enough, you can't grab enough sample for that primary search, it does a secondary search. When it does that secondary search, it starts pulling in more data, maybe outside of that neighborhood, and it may be a wider net of properties, which would include newer houses, which would include bigger houses, which would include more renovated properties. But it's all dependent upon where's the sample and how can we find that sample.
So are all properties going through both primary and secondary until you get evidence?
Yes. If the primary is sufficient, it stops there. If it's not sufficient, it goes to a secondary search.
But again, we don't necessarily raise property because we have data, because again, like I told the board, we did not send out as many notices as we did prior year because we did not have clear and convincing data. So we do our best to analyze with the data that we have. But again, if we don't have a justification to raise a value, we're not going to increase the neighborhood.
So I have personal experience of having protested houses that I've done no improvement on. And the next year, the grade gets moved up. So this is appraisal words, right? I get an F property and it gets moved up to average when I've done no permitting. So how does that happen?
Without looking at the neighborhood specific or the property specific, I would need to look at that. I can't answer that. I'm not saying that there wasn't a reappraisal
So
done.
this is kind of happening to me and also people that I'm coming across. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. So if you don't have sales in the primary search, then you go to the secondary. And that may be outside the neighborhood with newer sales.
Not necessarily newer, but we try to find like sales. That's the thing. We want to compare apples to apples, and I hate using that, but that's always what people say, apples to apples.
You want comparable sales.
Comparables, exactly, of similar properties. And again, the best ones are in that same neighborhood. But ultimately, if we do not have justification for raising a value, we don't. Now, in mass appraisal, there are some outliers, and unfortunately, sometimes it does take the appeals process to get us that information to clarify that. A lot of times when you do mass appraisals, we rely on the property owners bringing us that data to say, hey, look, yes, these properties sold, but let me show you my property. Look, this is the inside. Absolutely. Again, and I did take pride in the fact that we have a 85 to 90% settlement rate on the residential properties. Because again, we want to hear from those property owners. We want to look at the data. But yes, sometimes that does happen, ma'am.
So the cost basis is the built year.
Sure.
Mhm.
Maybe, the individual session between them might be fruitful,
We've had individual sessions. I was
Oh,
hoping to educate everybody.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But we can end it if you like.
Okay.
We could continue it if you'd like, ma'am.
So on the cost basis, that year built is already built in it. So how to explain that a little bit?
So the unit cost, based on the living area size. The year construction goes into depreciation, the percent good of the house. Obviously, the newer the house, the more anticipated percent good is. Starting off at 100%, meaning it is brand new, there is no depreciation on this property. A house typically will only see, that 100% in that very first year that it's built. After that, it will continually depreciate until it floors based on the age and condition of the property.
And that's in the evidence packet, the percentage.
Yes,
Okay,
it's called a percent good.
it's called the percent.
Percent good. And the age of the house, the age of the year of construction, and the condition of the house will go and play into that percent good.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
And I apologize for what I meant. We can continue what I meant, outside, but, I'm glad we were able to answer the questions, ma'am.
Quick question, Roy, on do you actively use, cap rates and indicated value and doing formulation on commercial property?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
And the formula you sent me when you said, in the denominator, or the numerator rather, being the market value, is that the value as proposed for the current appraisal year or the value that existed
For the current year.
for the current year?
Yes, sir.
That's the value you use,
Mhm.
not the raised value for the upcoming period.
That's
In other words, if we were looking at tax year 25, you'd be looking at the value that it was in 24.
As close to the first of the year as we can, whatever data that we have, to
Okay.
come up with a cap rate for
Okay.
evaluation in 2025. Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
That's where the number comes from. This is
Correct.
your opinion of what it is. Right.
Item K is government relations communications.
Yeah, I got some of this clarified in the hallway with Roy. Just maybe on the next legislative session, maybe we consider having a volunteer for that TAD update. Or somehow getting it more timely, in case there's some action that we need on any bills in the future. But it's kind of too early now, we've already finished. And we won't have anything to worry about till November of 2026.
As board members, don't we have access to the TAD database? So
I need to look into that because like I said, what we do, also Ms. Heisel, I'm part of the legislative committee. And what we do, we have a track list of all the bills that have been filed that pertain to appraisal districts, anything that relates to us. And our position is to just sit back and be a resource in case they ask us for data, like I talked about the data for the VPP accounts. And then we just move along through the session and see where it's going, where it's all, anything changed to it, if anything that was added at the last minute. The TAD Ledge Committee is appointed by the TAD president for the current year, which was Angie Ballard from Jefferson County last year. She asked me to be on the Ledge Committee for this session. So I told Ms. Heisel, to my knowledge, all the time that I've been part of TAD, there has never been a board director from an appraisal district on these committees. But I could definitely ask and see what information can be shared because it's all public knowledge. The majority of the information that we get is from Texas Legislature online. You can set up your own tracking bill there as far as.
We tried that, it was a mess.
Okay.
They only send you things when they're done. They don't send you things as they come up in committee.
We can look into that, man, because like I said, that's basically what I use. And then I track along with whatever, at the Ledge Committee. But
Yeah,
you're right.
You should get an alert every time something is changed on. So.
Yeah, it didn't do that for me and I did it on 2 main ones.
I think there would be some value in having real-time information because there are many things board members want to advocate on.
Okay.
Either positively or argue against. mean, reached out to a couple of legislators and talked to some staff members. But that was just my thinking and stuff.
Roy, do you know who was the original creator of the circuit breaker idea?
Oh my gosh. I do not.
Carlos,
It
do you
was
remember Carlos?
a couple of sessions ago. I can find that out pretty sure. It's like easy enough.
Well,
That's
No, I don't think.
I'm gonna round on the page and say, hey,
Is there,
I don't know if the governor can continue it by executive order or not.
I can definitely get that information and I'll send that along with the BBB information.
is there any issues on the table that need to go into executive session?
Yeah, please.
All right. Then. Moving to reports. All right. Ms. Crystal, you have the floor.
Yes, under tab 1, I will, in your packet, you have March and April funds investment report, but I'm gonna read from April. Under tab 1, it'll be the funds investment report for April 30th, 2025. Total deposits were $14,820,022. We did have year-to-date interest earned on our sweep account of $97,987.85. We are over collateralized by $2,849,939.51. Turn to page 4. On the bottom, you'll see the year-to-date total revenues collected at $14,267,480. Turn to page 7. You'll see our year-to-date surplus as of April 30th is $5,799,667. And on the next page is our designated cash funds, and there were no changes at the end of April. Do you have any questions?
These are funds from our fees for service, right?
These are our designated cash funds.
Yes, sir.
Yes, our reserve accounts.
Am I in that stock anywhere?
Appraisal records?
Since our last meeting, the May 15th protest deadline has passed. We do have second round notices and an eventual third round of notices that will have a later protest deadline, but those are much fewer accounts. So the second round of notices did go out the week of May 19th as our last meeting. They will have a June 20th protest deadline. And then we have a third notice run scheduled for June 20th, which will have a protest deadline of July 21st. That second round of notices, it ended up being around 11,000 notices, so much, significantly less than the 300 and something thousand that we sent the first round. The third round of notices probably be the same, just a few thousand accounts. And it's just what's left over either through rendition processing or ownership changes that came in late. On May 22nd, we had legal training and staff development for our appraisers. Our in-house counsel, Charles Wise, in partnership with MBBA, came in and conducted a legal update and best practices training for our appraisers. Appraisal Review Board activity, the ARB officials began conducting hearings on May 27th. We are now currently in our 6th week of informal conferences and 2nd week of formal ARB hearings. The maintenance of our 30-day processing window, it is going to be a little bit elevated this month and for maybe the next couple of months as we get through the protest season. Protest season kind of takes a lot of our attention to process, and it takes us away from other activities right now. We are still trying to maintain, up-to-date filings on that. We have deed filings through May 23rd, which is 11 days from current as of the posting of this report. The oldest deed out there is 41 days. Exemption applications, we're still processing. If they come into our office, we're processing them immediately. If they are sent in, they will be processed in order received. And right now we are 55 days from current on the most oldest exemption application. On page 2, this is where we get into the protest season itself. What are we seeing this year? When I ran these reports last week for the packet, we were sitting at 180,000 total protests received. Since then, over these last 5 days, we've added another 2,000 to 3,000 protests, and we will continue to add protests here and there through the rest of the season here. So we're pretty close to last year's numbers. Last year we had 184,000 protests. Probably going to see that number again this year. Page 3, I post this out there so you can get an idea of how the protest volume reaches our office. What I'm highlighting there is at the May 15th deadline, you see a big spike in the receivership of all these protests. That is the volume that we then have to work through. So the bulk of the protests we receive comes in the last week of the deadline. Once we receive that, then we have to go through a process of it. So that's what our staff is doing. But what you can see there in that line graph is, and for 2025, once we hit the deadline week, we were much more efficient at getting those entered and processed this year. So we had a quicker turnaround on that, which helps because that gets the people in our office, gets them to scheduling informal conferences and hearings. Page 4, we have the breakdown. This year, we're seeing a much larger agent protest volume. Owner protest volume did decrease year over year. So 73% of the protest volume is agent initiated and 27% is owner initiated. Page 5, we have a breakdown of how we're receiving those protests. It is shifting towards electronic platforms, where about 55% of all protests received are electronically, and 45% are through regular mail or drop off. Breaking that down to specifically residential property owners, approximately 60% of residential property owners chose to file their protest on the online platform, while 40% are still using either the electronic file only or mail-in.
That's page 6.
That's page 5, so still we be.
Okay.
So
So
that last paragraph on page 5.
file only, what does that mean, file versus on?
You can go online and you have 2 choices. You can proceed electronically where all your communication is electronic. So you'll conduct an informal conference electronically. Or you can choose a file only where you submit your protest electronically, but then you conduct your informal conference with an appraiser either over the phone or through Zoom.
So we're seeing a trend here of less face to face.
Yes, it is a growing trend. I just happened to see Travis Cad's trend, and their trend is in the 70% range of electronic versus face to face.
Do the contract representatives still, what's the rule on checking the box where they're getting an automatic contest every year, whether the property owner asks for it or not? Isn't that something that we can fix? I couldn't get to it this session, but it seems like, let the court be damned. We need to do something about that.
That's a situation that the legislature would have to take, because again, if I sign over my fiduciary responsibilities to an agent, that agent deems what's in the best interest of me, the property owner. So if they get, the notice of value, so they in turn have the right to file the appeal regardless of what the property owner says. Now, I have come to learn that there's some agents that will actually look at a value and talk to the property owner ahead of time and say, hey, look, I can protest it if you want, but it went down, or I can protest it if you want, but it really gets a fair number. But it's been our understanding and our experience that the majority of fiduciaries will just, once they have that appointment of agent, the authorization, they will file year over year. Hence, you see the increase in the agents versus property owners.
And that authority stays in effect until the owner revokes it.
Correct. But that's because they checked a certain box on the initial application.
And that's the way the law is written.
So the law could be written to say they must request it every year.
Right, and that would end up having to be done in a legislative session. So the next opportunity is 27.
You think that'd be fair, Roy?
It would be a good thing.
I think it would.
I don't think
It
that's
would be a
important.
great thing, because
It's not important.
we deal a lot with it. We deal a lot with it in our office as you do, and it'd be a great thing to change that, because not all of them, but there's a lot of them take advantage of their of their customers and.
Well, what happened to me once a number of years ago is I didn't get the notice. And it turned out it was because I had an agent, didn't know I had an agent.
We hear that a lot still.
Yeah.
We hear that a lot. That was an experience, yeah. No, absolutely, and again, that's one of the reasons that when we go out there and do our public outreach, we encourage property owners to go through the process instead of, getting a fiduciary. Talk to one of our staff first and let's see how, hopefully easy and convenient it is for the property owner. Because anything that they're saving you in taxes, they're getting a percentage off of that.
Yes.
So why would you wanna just give somebody that money? Just go through the process with our staff and just, learn the appeal, learn how to, the appeal process. So, yeah, I mean, they talk, well, property saving, but it comes at a cost to the property owner. It's not free. It's a percentage of whatever they're saving you, so.
People in my neighborhood use them and they were very displeased with them.
And again, Dr. Barksdale, that's if they actually ask for them. There's some, like you just said, sir, where, they came in and says, hey, I'm filing my appeal. Well, it's already heard. What do you mean it was already heard? Well, you're an agent. I don't have an agent. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So,
I agree that was troubling. Fortunately, it was financially, it wasn't big, but it
It's the same thing on
could have
homestead.
been.
Same thing on homestead exemption.
Mhm.
They're charging it, something that we constantly combat, and I know Roy and them constantly combat that, and so.
What's the standard charge that you charge for a percentage?
It used to be a flat fee, sir. Now it's like, 25% like for the savings.
50% on the
homestead
on the
exemption.
homestead's 50%.
Oh, wow.
And you're getting a year in advance without doing anything.
We can go back, the legislature allows us to go back 2 years retroactively, so if you don't have never filed your homestead exemption, 2025 will be the first year. We can go back 2024 and 2023 if you've been living there. So that's some significant savings that you're entitled to because you overpaid. So once you sign that fiduciary authorization for them to do the paperwork, you're giving them half of your refund.
Oh, wow.
And again, we do our best, and your office does too, so to let people know why this is free of charge.
Yeah. It's ballooned.
That's kind of almost, yeah.
Problem.
Yes. It's
Well,
Yeah.
it's really ballooned in that post-COVID, valuation.
Mhm.
So,
I use an agent for some of mine. It just saves me time.
well,
all of
yeah,
that.
well, I get to see multiple if we have to, sure.
Again, I mean, if you're aware and that's, you're good with it, that's fine. But again, it's the property owners that say, wait a minute, what is an agent? I have no idea. I've never signed up for it. That's the where, there are some good ones out there. There's some that we work with every year, and again, we understand that even though they are adversaries in the sense, they're representing property owners, business owners, and we know that we have to work with them year over year because that's the system. And we do our best to get that process done to get to certification.
Okay, to wrap up the report, there is a market value breakdown in there on page 6, and then on page 7 is our current resolution metrics, meaning where are we at in the protest season. As of the publishing of this document, we were at 35% of the value resolved. As of today, we were sitting about 50% resolved, bag resolved. So we've made some significant strides this year in our scheduling workflow, and it has pushed our year-over-year performance a lot quicker than the prior.
50% already.
Yes,
That's impressive.
Very impressive.
A lot of informal, I hope, a lot of informal. Makes it a lot easier.
Well, my wife gives you guys 5 stars.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Prater.
Certainly.
How far behind are we on, like, when I say behind, how long? Cause I know people call us, say, hey, I haven't heard anything from the appraisal district, when we're gonna get our date set, so, we check the form as a courtesy, but how long, like, for instance, that one account, it calls all the time.
I think where you're going with that is that we have a lot of folks calling who haven't had what informal service yet. And they sent their appeal maybe a month or 6 weeks ago. Are y'all behind in setting up the appeals or?
No. So we have mailed letters to all homeowners who have filed either file only or has submitted paper documents. So they should be receiving a letter in the mail for them to schedule their informal conference.
It is just got set this week or what?
This week, the last batch of original letters will go out. So we've already sent out thousands of letters for them to schedule their own informal conference. If they haven't received one or they misplaced it or whatever, they can call our office and schedule a meeting. There's no delay.
So on the notes from y'all where it says, you know, it says that it shows that they submitted their protest, but there's no date set up. Is that something you want them to contact in, y'all? Or
If
is it?
they're wanting,
I'm just trying to get a timeline so we can tell them, hey, they're 30 days or 45 days or 60 days, you know. So I'm just trying to get a rough
now,
date of how long is it taking to actually respond to a protest request?
the electronic, there's a bunch of different ways depending upon how they protested.
I think this is by mail
By mail?
or drop off. It might have been drop off, but I think it was by mail. It wasn't.
Last batch of letters for them will be mailed out this week for them to schedule their own informal conference.
so
If
we're-
they haven't, call our office.
Okay, so we're still in the, I guess, in the processing mode of, okay, that's what I need to know.
But just curiosity, I mean, if they wanna call us now, they don't have to wait for that letter. They can say, hey, we found the protest, we can look online to make sure that they have it. And we can walk them through the process of getting it, a schedule for them. But that's one of the things that we've been able to do is to give the property owners the convenience of them scheduling themselves. So a lot of property owners say, I'm gonna be out of town this week, so you tell us when you want us to call you. But if they haven't had the chance or they haven't received it, if they filed a protest, we can help them, facilitate a date and time to their, convenience, and we can do that for them. So they don't have to wait
That's
for
good
that
to
letter.
know. What is that still the same number or?
Yes, sir.
So is it like the help box?
Mhm.
So the help at bcab.org,
Correct.
is there a drop down that says, I want to set my informal?
It's
They can use that to get
Yes.
there, and yes, we can set that up.
Tell us about that, because that's not something I'm familiar with. I never followed protest, so I need to.
I wanna check, sir.
Deadline passed.
How would that?
They can either call our office,
Contributions.
they can call our office and our support staff will help them walk them through scheduling their informal conference. Or they can use the help center.
That's what I'm
The
wondering.
help center is like the email, just send us that help center ticket and tell us you want to schedule your informal conference and we'll reply back.
But it's help.bcab.org.
There's a big link on our webpage.
on our webpage, it's a big blue square, it says Help Center. And today I learned also that there was also property owners that had missed their ARB hearing. It's also, I missed my formal hearing, so they can write to the chair, Mr. George, directly, and we'll make sure that he gets it so he can review it. So yeah, there's plenty of avenues there for property owners.
Thank you.
All right. District operations. Well, here.
Actually, Mr. Gannon, right now we're on, tab N. Better community engagement.
No, you forgot the transparency. Three. Under and. And three is transparency star, the transparency star.
That's right, that's district operations, or this is the, compliance transparency star.
Where are we again? I'm sorry, I'm lost.
And 3A,
Three.
and like mom, 3A.
I don't have three.
Oh,
No, it's listed on the summary sheet. It's just the,
It's a-
Oh, I apologize.
Client's transparency star designation.
This is just for informational purposes. There is something that there's an award that the comptroller's office provides for local government. They are called the Transparency Star Awards. I just want to let the board know that this is something that our office will be looking forward to hopefully achieving. We are going to be applying for the Open Government and Compliance. And again, this is from the comptroller's office that recognizes local government for transparency efforts. I got to give our new board of directors credits because they're, about accessibility and transparency. So this is one of the things that when I saw that, I thought that'd be something that would be good for us because again, and this has to do with our governing body as far as our meetings, agendas, posting them on our website, making it easily accessible for the public. So I am hoping that in the near future to bring y'all some good news that we have applied and hopefully have won the Transparency Star Award. This is just for information purposes.
Okay, is this the first time we're applying for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
Great.
ma'am.
And you're telling them that we're streaming and having it on.
Absolutely.
I think we should have a star for everybody that successfully goes through.
There are others, but right now we're gonna, take a baby step and then just go for the open government and compliance. So like I said, I hope that in the near future, we can give you all some good news.
I'm talking about the people that come here and successfully like get a gold star. Don't tell others how easy.
We get more than I, you would expect. We do get a lot of compliments, again, the best compliment that I feel that we can get is that they leave here with a better understanding of the process. They understand values, tax rates, tax bills. Again, it's not adversarial, it's not confrontational. It's a conversation that we have about what we do. And we take great pride in giving your constituents the customer service that they've come to expect.
So stars are out of the question. You look at those undesignated, non-committed.
You can come to the pipe and down and get some of those little sheriff's badges. All right, Miss Jennifer, you are up.
Good evening, everybody. Speaking of our customer service and transparency, looking at our May community interaction statistics, as to be expected, we did see an increase in the number of phone calls that we received during the month of May. We received almost 25,000 phone calls throughout the month. Of course, with that many phone calls, our average wait time did increase a little bit, but I have to give credit and thanks to staff throughout the district who logged into our customer information and assisted department's queue. So that way we had that department working with in-house people and staff in other departments jumped on those phone lines to try to minimize the wait as much as possible. We had 5,000 visitors in-house last month, and that was and while that number did decrease from April, our chatbot numbers increased. So our chatbot saw over 4,000 communications, which means people who may not have been physically coming into the office were still getting that assistance that they needed. Again, speaking of departmental health throughout the district, I'd like to thank staff for joining Roy and I at our community engagement events throughout May. Between the two of us, we attended 14 different events that were spread again throughout the county. If you look at the second page of my little report, it's going to have a consolidated view of the April and May locations that we visited. This is the bulk of our community engagement. This is where we get the highest number of events, but we do events throughout the year. This is just going to be the bulk of it. And between April and May, we got to interact with 1,881 residents face to face. We brought home protests, we brought home exemption applications. Again, trying to give that customer service outside of the building because that's just who we are. The last few pages of my report are the details of those May events, when, where, which members of staff accompanied us. And that is all I have for you unless you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want us to adjourn. I have a couple of questions for.
Sure. Go ahead.
So, Roy, one of the problems that we've been running across, and they're not a whole lot of people, but the ones that are, puts us in a very difficult situation. No fault of y'all, but what I was gonna ask on that form, and Carlos, you want to explain a bit what we're basically wanting? You do have a spot in that form for email and phone number, but it doesn't say required. And it would, or Carlos, you want to explain on it?
Yeah, from time to time, we have to contact taxpayer or property owner.
Mhm.
And we try really, really hard to find an email address or phone number. We'll look for a document. At times, we can't find one, so we'll call the appraisal district, we'll talk to Sarah. See, maybe the homestead application has a phone number and email address. And we have found at times people submit that application without a phone number or email address, and we're unable to contact the taxpayer for whatever reason. So we were wondering, is that a requirement for y'all to accept or not accept the application?
On the Zendesk, it does require contact information. It does have email, it does have phone numbers too.
But we're finding something that don't have it.
But not on the, but not on the application itself.
Oh, on the
That's
application.
that's
That is optional.
So we're just asking that you review it because like we've had some adjustments and stuff and we can't find the people and it would be a help in particular cases if y'all would require that
Absolutely.
email and phone number.
Or just at least the phone number, because like my parents don't have an email address. And a lot of people
Right.
that I know don't, so like I think the requirement would be the phone number, not just the.
Right,
Yeah, yeah, there you go. That's a good point. Put up an email, required if after, if after.
Phone number
Yeah.
required, we put a spot there for the email,
Yes.
so if they have one.
They don't serve.
Well, I think the spots are there, but there's no, nothing that's forcing them to. do
Right.
it.
The only requirement is a copy of the driver's license. So yeah, we'll do our best to make sure that they do.
Look at that, just review that, Roy. And then the other thing, I know that we have talked, and I don't see it on the agenda, we were gonna put the name on the agenda.
I'm hoping to do that at the next meeting. I know that I told the board about our intent to hopefully ask the board's permission to change our name from Bear Appraisal District to Bear Central Appraisal District. I will come to y'all hopefully at the next meeting with a resolution for the board to consider. We have done some preliminary research as far as the signage, which I think would be the most expensive, and it's nominal. And don't get me wrong, it's not nominal. It's the estimates that we got were like 13 and 18,000. But everything else is pretty standard as far as like, the letterheads. We're not gonna change our logos. We're gonna keep using that. Our business cards, we'll use those. But it's basically for, clarity as far as the separation of what we do. We are a political subdivision of the state. And that way, the board, hopefully with approval, we can have ample time, and I'll give Jennifer plenty of time to get her, media blitz going as far as getting the public acclimated to the fact that January 1st, with board approval, we would now be known as Bear Central Appraisal District.
Yeah, cause I had asked Roy, cause we had discussed it, I had asked Roy to put it on the agenda, but
Yeah.
cause, we just didn't get it done, but we did research, actually, Carlos did the research for me, and I don't remember if it was Naomi or Erica. We did research all 254 appraisal districts, and every appraisal district does have the county name on there. I wanted to change it to Alamo, but it being consistency, everyone did have here, but I am in favor of changing it to the central district, so if you would put that on the
Yes,
next
sure,
meeting or
absolutely.
meeting after, I mean, it's not. If not next meeting, the meeting after, I'd like to have it on.
I was hoping for July. That way, like I said, with board approval, that will give us plenty of time to get the ball rolling.
It's probably easier because you're still using BCAD.
Exactly.
So you're not.
Exactly. And then to that point, man, like when you still hear, Bear County appraisal, Bear County. And that's where the confusion is. And we hear it a lot from property owners. I'm sure y'all do too, sir. I mean, you've said it at town halls that, we are not affiliated with the county. And again, by using central, it would also correspond with the other big metros and their separation also.
I mean, it won't eliminate the confusion, but over time,
No.
it certainly minimize it.
Correct.
Any reduction in confusion is great for me.
Seems the older I get, the more confused I seem to be.
Right now, our acronym is bad.
Right.
Bitter. So,
And
like,
I think Jennifer was the one that said that because
Which would be great if we were rappers.
we started using BCAD to kind of break the bad, acronym. It was BCAD, and it was just automatically assumed Bear County because we appraise property in the county. So yes, but
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that.
definitely for July.
Mr. White.
Good evening, everyone.
Here we go.
Don't let anyone mishandle your work. And the reason why I say that is in my report, I do a lot of stuff that you just spoken about. For example, I have homeowners that come to me that want to fill out those forms such as homestead exemption because they don't know how to do it. So I talk them through the process. We have homeowners that want to know more about late hearings and how to fill those out and letting them know the differences between the 2525 C, the 2525D, as well as 41.411 and what they mean, because sometimes when they want to do a late hearing, the first thing is given to them is 2525C. And they say, well, there is an error. Well, what kind of error? You know, it's what they think is a corrective action really isn't. So it has to be explained to them what that means. And what the 2525D also, and also what relates to the 41411. Just because they say that I didn't hear or didn't receive notice, what does that mean? So when it comes to them, and what Bear does is Bear goes in the files and looks at, was it sent out? Yes, it was. Now it's up to you. Why didn't we receive this? And then they get stuck, just didn't receive it. So I go through that with them. Now in my report, which is not long, it talks about information that was given, forms that they needed talking through. And then we had, this is my, that I'm gonna share with you. We had a homeowner that came in. She came in with her, all of her certificates. And certificates for what? For real estate, certificates for this, her accomplishments in life. And she wanted to make a point. Well, I listened to her, but then again, I needed someone to actually answer the appraisal aspect of it. So I asked one of the directors of realty, residential, came down, sat down, listened to her, and listened to every word she said. She wanted to change some writings, but those she could not change just for her. So he explained that to her. And by the time she left and we walked her to the door, she had a smile on her face. And that is, and as I was walking back to my desk, that's when this came up. Don't let anyone mishandle your work. That director of resident did not mishandle her work. He listened to her. She had those certificates, which taught me that this is who I am. This is what I've accomplished. Was complimented on. And she left with a smile. Are there any questions for me? Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White.
So, I do not see it on the agenda, but in the packet, we do have this, letter from Mr. Uresti.
Yes, Mr. Gannon, before we do adjourn the meeting, Mr. Resti, I had gotten an email from Jerry, requesting us to bump the July meeting.
Oh, I remember writing a letter to you, but you know.
To Commissioner's Court.
Yeah, what I,
Back, it was from Mr.
what I was asking, Mr. President, was that it's, like for instance, today, I sent Commissioner's Court for about 3 hours, and if at all possible, and I'm okay with meetings on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, but if we have to have them on Tuesday, I'd like to not have them on the days that we have the Commissioner's Court, because those are long meetings for us.
What days do we court meet?
It's on Tuesday. I can't remember, it's the first and third or second and fourth. Well, what's the date today? The 10th, so it's probably the second.
It's probably on the website.
Yeah, it's on the second and fourth, but it's on the website. And
I would have no problem going to like the third Tuesday.
I think we sent you a calendar, didn't we, through the end of the year? I thought she sent you, the Jerry sent you.
No, sir.
She was supposed to, I'll get with.
We don't want to get Jerry in trouble, but she did not turn.
Well, she's in trouble now. No, but no, we'll get you that, but I'd like for you to consider that, Mr. President.
I'm happy to do that.
And that's why I wanted to present it to the board. That way they can all look at their calendars and, come to whatever consensus the board wants, and we'll meet here.
Yeah, you just threw me off, and then. Writing a letter to you.
Yeah, we still have one more.
Yeah.
I just figured it's better than
So you counsel once a month.
You know, those meetings can be long and on the paper, they're not getting, will probably be less aggravating for you to get there.
There you go.
Mr. Gannon, Mr. George.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I missed you. My
I wasn't
apologies.
gonna force myself on you, sir.
Yeah. My apologies.
Again, I noticed that I'm blocking you off from the door. I've got to figure out a way to take advantage of that. I'm only going to cover like two things this evening. So, first of all, last year you increased the number of panel members. And I wanted to let you know that has worked out quite well with we've been able to flex and change size of the panels based upon the number of hearings. With just life situations and people having just various life situations, and some people we've lost over the past couple of weeks. We've been able to maintain 16 panels constantly, filling all the rooms. So it's been perfect for us. So thank you for that. In addition, I want to carry on from what Mr. Allison had, doing numbers from the ARB's point of view for the formal hearings. We had 10,000 scheduled over the last 8 days initially. Of those 10,000 we had scheduled, 31% of them got handled as informals by the district, which took them off our hands, so we didn't have to deal with those. Reduced our numbers to about 6,900 that finally was on the floor for each day, scheduled, spread out through those 8 days. Of those 6,900, 78% were no-shows. Now you were talking about agents, and you seem to have an interest in agents. Of that 78%, it's about 5,400, but 3,800 to 3,900 of those were agents that were no-shows. So that left us with 1,573 hearings. And of those, 10% ended up turning into non-jurisdictions. Either because they came to an agreement with the district during the hearing, or they ended up not having approval to talk about the property anyway. So that's about 10%, about 159. Correction, 150. So yeah, we did about 1,573 hearings that turned into court orders. So that's what our last 8 days looked like. And that's all I had, unless you had any questions.
So if an agent doesn't show up, then the value doesn't get disputed.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then is there another opportunity for them?
They just have to write to me, and for agents, they have to explain why they didn't show. And if it's a proper justification, we'll reschedule it. If it's not proper, it's dropped.
Why are those no-shows as a result of like automatic protest filing, that they're computer generated or some strange reason like that, or they just no-show?
They're just no-show.
Does that create a burden for us, or a paperwork burden, or is it?
Not from mine.
Trying to go through our system like.
Yeah, it creates a burden from the district's end because they still have to generate all that, schedule it. We still bring in the panels because we're expecting them to be there. But once they don't show from our end, at the ARB's end, there's no additional burden.
And do we do, I should know the answer to this, I'm sorry I don't, but do we do a single member ARBs?
We do.
That's an option now.
That is an option.
How's that working?
Quite well.
Okay.
We haven't had very many at this point in the season, but they tend to pick up as the season moves on.
Are there any particular people who are working with you that say I volunteer to be the solo person, or
Yeah, there are
just random, or what?
There are certain individuals that like doing solos and others that don't. So yeah, there is some that just come in day and volunteer for it right off the bat.
So it seems to me, going back to our previous conversation about agents, can we go back and get historical data for how many agents just don't show up? I mean, if we're gonna advocate for a change in the legislation, then it'd be much more effective to do that if we have data. And that was when I heard it, I was startled by.
I'm startled.
Yeah. So it's just something we might want to go back in the archives and see if we've got information, but at least from this point forward, let's record it.
I mean, that's a lot of data entry. It really
From this
is.
point forward, I can record it. I don't know if we can go back and actually check that.
It's a status code that I can run in the system.
Is it? Okay.
Okay, so that would be useful for future advocacy. I mean, I realize it's not till 27 that we were really doing it, means at least then we'll have 2 more years worth of data.
But in your report, Scott, you just tag that it's an agent. It doesn't necessarily tell you who the agent is, or does it?
Yeah, I'd have to look.
Okay.
I'd have to look at what options I've had, which options I had.
Did you say 70-something%?
That's 78%.
God, that's a number, isn't it? Mr. George, are you the
President of the DRB board? Is
I
it
am,
the same?
sir.
Okay, because we've always said president, I thought, look,
president, chairman,
chairman, okay. All right.
whatever you want to call
The big, he's officially now the big.
You need a
Thank you.
big strong.
Congratulations.
All right, did we want to go ahead and see if we wanted to move to July 15th as our July date? Does anyone have a problem with that?
I'm sorry, what date was it again?
July 15th.
Still a Tuesday, right?
Yeah, still.
Yeah, and I don't have the information, so I don't know if that was if that's a commissioners court meeting, do you know?
That, I didn't see it on their calendar.
So, can I check on it? And
Yeah, get back to it.
If it is, then it could be okay.
If no one has any objection, and if that works out correctly, then the plan, it's plan on doing
As
it.
long as the board is fine with it, yeah.
Okay, I'll get with you, Mark.
And just as a reminder, Chairman, moving our ad hoc building to
Oh, that's true, because it was gonna be on the same day.
the same day.
Good point. Good point. It was gonna be on that same day.
If we have to keep it for July 15th, we'll run with it, and then
It was for July
starting in
15th.
August, we'll start.
Okay, well, it would be July 8th if we could stay with our regular.
Okay, let's do with our regular meeting for the
So we'll look
next
for
month,
August.
and then I'll work with you.
Okay, why don't we get our calendars, give me if you'll coordinate, get the calendars at the next meeting, put it as an agenda item, so we'll get dates for the rest of the year.
So for my clarification, July 8th, we're still sticking to it,
Yeah,
and then we're still meeting with the board, the ad hoc building committee
Yes.
beforehand. Perfect,
okay.
okay,
And it's at 2 p.m.
yes,
Almost came to it too.
I'm glad you did.
So. We're gonna do both at the same time.
Yes.
Chairman, how did you vote?
All right, that is the end of our agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Heisel, Dr. Garcia, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?